Welcome to The Rest is Politics US.
What are we talking about today, Katty?
Let's start with Epstein. And quickly, just to remind everybody, the DOJ released millions of these documents that they've been holding over the weekend. 180,000 images were released. Some 2,000 videos were released. Emails, lists, diagrams, all out there. There are emails between Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Jeffrey Epstein inviting him to various parties. There are emails between Elon Musk asking where Epstein's wildest parties would be. There are emails which suggest Bill Gates had an affair and may, according to some of these documents, have caught a sexually transmitted disease from a Russian girl. There are photos of Andrew crouching over a woman, young woman, I would say, judging by the image, lying on the floor. Donald Trump, in reaction to these documents, has said that it all absolves him from blame, and he has attacked and threatened to sue the comedian Trevor Noah after Noah claimed that Donald Trump had been on Epstein's island. I mean, it's very hard, Anthony, I think, to make sense of everything from the Epstein files because there are so many of them. So we have investigative reporters who are trawling through them. And literally, as we're speaking, recording this on Monday lunchtime, people are still giving us, drops that are coming out of them on Twitter and from the major news organizations. I think for me, the biggest issue is the DOJ is saying this is probably going to be the last major tranche of documents that come out. Will the people who were calling for the release of the Epstein files be satisfied with this big chunk of emails and documents and videos? Will they think, okay, I'm clear. Jeffrey Epstein was a very bad guy. There isn't any more need for any criminal prosecutions. Donald Trump is in the clear as he says he is. And I have learned everything I need to know to make me convinced that there was not a conspiracy of people in powerful positions protecting Jeffrey Epstein because either they were getting something from him of a sexual nature or he had some kind of dirt on them. Do you think this dump does that? Is this it? Done and dusted with the whole Epstein file saga?
I would say not done and dusted, but I maintain that Donald Trump will be effectively insulated from this. And I maintain that despite whatever he did, and it was probably a lot, but who knows? Again, that's my opinion that it was probably a lot, but I maintain that he will be absolved from this. They're spending months and months and months cleansing him and redacting him from the documents. And even though, and again, this is a fact, so I can state it, he's shown up 48,000 times in 3 million documents. There is no smoking gun, as you and I predicted on this show several months ago. But what I'm surprised about is that you're not talking about the Starmer Victoria Albert Museum, which is closing for 2 years due to its renovation, due to low attendance. See, I'm surprised that you're not talking about that, see? Because Prime Minister Starmer, you may not have saw this in the news, he put his name on the Victoria Albert Museum. It's now called the Starmer Victoria Albert Museum, and it's closing for 2 years.
Yeah, well, that's because then you see he was so overwhelmed with people wanting to come to the museum that he just they have to triple the size of it because everybody wanted to show up. Should we fill people in on what you're actually talking about?
Yeah, because our UK listeners, if Starmer, Prime Minister Starmer, put his name on that museum or a symphony hall, or you pick something, I guess, Westminster Abbey, we could call it the Starmer Westminster Abbey, but Donald Trump put his name on the Kennedy Center. And so it's now the Trump Kennedy Center.
A very big, famous art center that I've been to many times just down the road from me in Washington.
But Katty, it is an art center, but it is actually a memorial to the slain president, like the Lincoln Memorial and like the Jefferson Memorial. Jackie Kennedy, his widow, wanted his memorial to be like a performing arts center because they were into the performing arts. And if you look at it and step back from it, it's a 1960s version of what the Lincoln Memorial is rendered after. But Donald Trump, in order to defile it, because everything Trump touches or almost everything dies, he's now put his name on the Kennedy Center, the memorial of the slain president, and a result of which no one's going.
Yeah.
And performances are being dropped, and there's a boycott of people. And so he's closing the center for 2 years of renovation, which I'm sure he's going to put gilded Liberace like marble and gold in the place to make it even more of a disaster. But I'm bringing this up because we're not in a normal country right now. We're not, United States, not normal. Of course, Prime Minister Starmer, I was kidding, fellas. Prime Minister Starmer did not name the Victoria Albert Museum after himself. But I'm saying it to point out how absolutely outrageous what Donald Trump is doing and how little pushback he's getting from the first article of the U.S. Constitution known as the U.S. Congress. So,
yeah, I mean, first of all, changing the name of the Kennedy Center, there are a lot of questions about whether he was actually allowed to do that. So he changes the name, he brings in a new board, he puts himself as chair of the board and says that he's going to de-wokeify the Kennedy Center and it's going to become much more kind of MAGA-friendly performances. They have, my understanding is I was told by somebody who's in the arts world in Washington, they have a whole load of shows booked until the fall end of this year. That's fine. They've got lots of shows. But then the problem was they had no programming. And they had no programming because guess what? All of the shows were thinking either they don't want to go and perform there because it's now the Trump Kennedy Center. And so they're doing it as a political statement, or apparently there's no money for marketing. It's in disarray. They're worried the audiences won't show up. They keep trying to move the shows into smaller and smaller theaters, and people, they can't make money out of it. So this whole big thing that he announced, which was really a vanity project on behalf of the president, a kind of glorification of Donald Trump's presidency, has actually turned out to be hugely detrimental to the art scene in Washington, D.C., because the Kennedy Center is the big dog in town. And so it's something that doesn't work. And I think in a way, the comparison here is, and we'll get back to Epstein in a minute, I promise everybody, but there are things that Donald Trump does which are overreach, which then don't work. And in the process, you cause damage to other people, all the people working at the Kennedy Center, all of the artists who are going to perform at the Kennedy Center, the citizens of DC who enjoy going to the Kennedy Center. Not that he really cares about that, but I think it's one example of, and we've had several of them over the last few weeks, whether it's been Greenland, Minneapolis, much more serious, where overreach on the part of the president has resulted in blowback by the president, but quite a lot of bad political fallout and damaging fallout to other people.
So, Katty, it is connected to the Epstein thing, if you don't mind me saying so, because it's another distraction. And the goal is I am waiting for my Department of Justice to cleanse these files of anything related to me, and I am going to continue to distract the American public with my nonsense. And I'm also doing the best I can to inflame the liberals. I want their heads and their hair on fire as they run around talking about and remarking about my idiocy. And so all of that is working. But I want to list 3 people who are impacted by the files.
Yes.
And then I want you to respond to them. Okay, so the first one is Jeff Epstein himself. And so it's posthumous, but he is decisively a rogue figure who wasn't just a sexual predator, but I think it's definitive at this point that he was running a system, and this was not a solo crime. And his legacy, in my opinion, is now inseparable from institutional failure for a world that I will describe as the elites, okay? The number 2 victim, and I think this is the most consequential, Katty, is the elite orbit. Okay, these are the real losers. Okay, these are the billionaires, the powerful lawyers, the media executives, intelligence adjacent figures, royal, former Prince Andrew, and political insiders like Lord Mandelson, who may or may not be a lord by the time this broadcast is over. He's resigned, as we both know, from the Labor Party. But I think this is potentially big, because I think this is what younger politicians like Mondani and a new crop of politicians are going to run on. And believe it or not, there's a lot of seething anger by a very large group of people in this country over the fact that these billionaires and quasi-trillionaires and political figures, no harm will be done to them in the United States. They're losing their jobs in places in Europe, and they're getting defrocked like Andrew did in UK. But the Department of Justice, Dana Bash was told over the weekend, nobody's getting prosecuted.
Nobody's getting prosecuted.
Here's a list of all the bad guys. But I think there's going to be political blowback from this.
Yeah, I think you're right. One other thing, I think you're so smart to bring this up and to frame it in that context, because it is difficult from this massive pile of documents to pull somebody out and say, this person is definitively guilty of having colluded with Jeffrey Epstein to traffic young girls, having sex with underage girls, and having a kind of system of nefariousness, because there are so many documents that we're still sorting through them. But there are plenty of very important people, the kinds of people who speak at Davos, where you and I were, the kinds of people who speak at Democratic conventions, the kind of people who speak at Republican conventions, who have been lionized over the course of the last 20 years, who even in the cursory first look at some of these documents don't come out of this well. Now, did they commit crimes? We can't say that yet. We don't know that yet. We haven't got all of the information from these documents yet. But the degree to which they were in cahoots with Jeffrey Epstein, the tone of the emails that they sent backwards and forwards with Jeffrey Epstein, I mean, maybe Andrew is at the most egregious end of it, but knowing what we do about Epstein and the way that he was raping young girls for years and years and years, hundreds of them, and the cozy tone with which these men talk to him about sexual issues doesn't make any of these men look good. And the fact that there is no retribution against them. It's interesting that when Bernie Sanders and AOC went on that tour, they called it the Fight the Oligarchy tour, which sounds like it's sort of us against the business leaders. But I think in a way, you're right. It's us against the elite. It's the elite that have been protecting themselves, whether it's because their assets have gone up, because they have had more of the share of the pie of GDP, because income disparity has grown, or because they've protected themselves with a sexual monster like Epstein. I think you're right. I think it's such a smart way of framing it, Anthony.
So I just want to go one step further, because again, I think they're all tied together. So Epstein is bothering a lot of people. And guess who those people happen to be in Trump's base? Okay, they are the Marjorie Taylor Greens, who were quote unquote pure MAGA. And it's tied to the Kennedy Center, because I'm going to tell you why.
I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for the time.
Okay, so ready? The Kennedy Center was effectively boycotted. And the boycott had such a big impact that they're now closing the center. Now, one of our podcast contemporaries is a personal friend of ours, Scott Galloway, is calling for a boycott of the Mag 7. Okay, you can go to his website, unsubscribe, and he is asking people to resist and unsubscribe. That's the name of the website. And it's launching on February 1st, which is
basically an economic boycott of America that he's calling for.
Well, you see, what he's calling for is a boycott of the Mag 7. He doesn't want to hurt small businesses, and he doesn't want to strike, which always disproportionately hurts small businesses. So how is it all tied together? It's tied together because Trump has sufficiently pissed everybody off by saying that there was a file that he was going to release. Then he becomes president. She lies about it. Then she says there's no file. Then Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene say there is a file. Now they're going to 6 million document dump a file that has redacted Trump and anybody close to Trump from the file. But guess what, Katty? Everybody and their mother knows exactly what they did. And so there's a point of potential resistance right now, where if Galloway and this group starts a boycott process similar to what they did in the Trump Kennedy Center, this is going to be an unmitigated disaster for those tech companies, okay? In the United States in the 1950s, if you were black, you could not sit in the front of the buses in the South. Rosa Parks said, F you guys, I'm too tired. I'm not moving to the back. They threw her off the bus, and then there was a bus boycott throughout the South by the African-American citizens that lived in the South. And it caused massive consequential damage. So this is all connected, Katty, because this is going to trigger something now that even people in Trump's base are talking about wanting to do.
Although I think it is one thing for theater companies to boycott performing at the Kennedy Center, and to, for audience goers not to buy tickets at the Kennedy Center, and another for people who have made a lot of money from the Mag 7 or have them in their pension funds to suddenly say, okay, I'm going to liquidate all of my Mag 7 stocks, even if that means, I might have to retire a little bit later, or I take a financial hit to myself.
This could be consumers that don't own any stocks, but they have an Instagram account, they have a Amazon Prime account.
And they pull back from that.
They are ordering stuff from these different companies. They switch from Apple to Samsung, and they say, geez, I'm really sorry. I now have to protest your fawning over the wannabe dictator. So I have to fawn.
And we should watch that, because it'd be very interesting to see how far that goes and how big it gets. I want to say one other thing on the Epstein files before we move on to some of the politics, which are super interesting. And what on earth was Tulsi Gabbard doing down in Georgia? We'll get to that too in a second. But we've taken time on this show to talk about the victims of the Epstein files. The Justice Department said that one of the reasons they had taken their time to release these files was because they wanted to protect the identity of the victims. They were going to go through all of these files and make sure that names and faces of people who had been sexually abused as girls by Jeffrey Epstein, that they didn't have their names put out there in public without even their permission being given, and potentially could have dangerous threats against them, get re-traumatized. It is not something that they wanted to do, but guess what? In this big dump of documents over the course of the weekend, the victims were not protected. I mean, to your point about there is a system for the elites and there is a system for the victims. Once again, the victims have been the last people on the food chain, and they've been forgotten because there are names and faces of survivors who are out there. There's a driving license of one victim. Her name is Anushka Di Giorgio. She has said that she can use her name now because her name and her face are there on her driving license. Somebody took the time to redact her address, but they left her name and her face out there. And so she's now out there in public. Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, had said specifically this wouldn't happen. So, I mean, I think it gets to your point, Anthony. There is one world for the rich and powerful, and there is another world and another set of rules for the people that have no wealth and no power. And in this case, those are the surviving victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and they have been forgotten once again in this process.
So, Katty, when you say that the wishes of the victims goes unrequited by the actions of our government, I just have to tell you how much that pains me and how much sympathy I would like to express to them and on their behalf. It's just a very upsetting thing, and my heart does go out to these people. If you want to add that to ICE and you want to add that to literally the worst poll numbers, President has a 61%, as you and I are speaking, is a 61% negative approval rating right now. And when people ask why, they say ICE. And now you have this underlying context. The House subcommittee voted over the weekend to try to hold back even more information or continue to slow roll the Epstein file. And so these people are sitting around scratching their heads saying, okay, you really made us move a mountain here. You told us you were not for sexual predators. You told us there were no more forever wars. You told us you were going after the criminals. You were going after the worker bees. You were going to go after the criminals in the immigration saga. And they're pushing. And listen, I know we're going to get to the Texas. You're in Texas. We're going to talk a little bit about what happened in Texas. And frankly, that could have been a one-off. But I really think that the heat is on the Republicans right now. And again, just to state for people the idiocy of this, Keir Starmer has announced that he's going to take Greenland for His Majesty's government. Okay, and look at the look on your face.
Yeah,
okay.
I know. You have to, but this is the crazy world we live in where you have to put it in that context.
A Brit could be listening right now.
Right, exactly.
And say, what are you talking about? Well, no.
Or
Keir
even
Starmer.
Barack Obama says that Canada is going to be the 51st state.
So it's beyond the pale. And so when I pick up the phone, because these people do talk to me, I don't even know why they're talking to me. But when I pick up the phone and I talk to a Republican congressional leader, which I did this morning, and I say, this doesn't bother you? Oh, the Greenland thing is over. It's been resolved favorably. And what about the traffic coming over the border from Canada, where you want to talk about where a boycott has already started on American goods and American tourism? That would be the Canadian citizens. I'm scratching my nose for all of you guys listening. I'm scratching my nose on YouTube. That's what Canada's doing to us, Katty Cat. And that is hurting a lot of small businesses. That would be the bordering states with Canada, New York and Michigan, Minnesota, etc. But it's also hurting in Florida. Okay, so again, Mr. Congressman, what's up? The equivocation and the ground shifting of the norms is bizarre.
Not to mention, by the way, everyone should read the Wall Street Journal article about the UAE sheikh who invested a huge amount of money in the Trump family crypto business on the eve of the inauguration.
So, Katty, we're going to get to that too, but I just want you to hear the ground shifting equivocation, right? Oh, he doesn't really mean that with Canada. And, I talked to him about Putin and he says, well, I've got to be nice to Putin so I can get him to the table. But then why not be nice to Prime Minister Carney? Don't you want to get them to the table and do business with them too? Okay. Now, this is where I'm going to get in trouble, and Gohanger will probably edit me out, but I don't care, Katty, because it is my opinion. Okay. And I'm going to share it with you. It's pretty clear from the documents that Epstein had a relationship with the Russians. It's pretty clear. I'm not going to go so far to say that he was an agent of Russia and he was running a pedophile ring to create compromise on all of the world's Western elites. I'm not going to go that far to say that.
But you are just going to say.
But I'm right on the edge, okay?
Okay, so what is it in the files so far that suggests to you a strong link between Jeffrey Epstein and Moscow?
So, Katty, Vladimir Putin is mentioned no less than 1,000 times. And there's insinuations in the file that Epstein had scheduled meetings with Putin and he had a relationship with Lavrov, the foreign minister. Now, I'm going to state candidly and for the record, there's no proof that Epstein ever met Putin. But the files do show something very troubling. Epstein claimed he had an appointment with Putin. It's right there in the emails. And then he later tried to position himself as a back channel to the Kremlin, again, right there in the emails. And he was trying to offer insight on U.S. leadership through Lavrov. Okay. I mean, again, these are right in the emails. So it tells you that he wanted proximity to Russian power so that he could sell access. And it raises serious counterintelligence questions. So again, these are my opinions. This is my surmise, having delved into these documents over the weekend. This is an editorial opinion by me that I'm sharing. But again, you've heard me say this on this podcast. When the window's open and you hear clippity clop, it is a horse. It is not a zebra. So these are my opinions, and I can show you directly in the files where there's a tie. But again, I love Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin's my guy. I have a picture of Vladimir Putin and me in my house, in my residence, above the picture of my family members. And again, if you haven't caught on, I'm channeling Donald Trump because this is how he talks about the guy. And no president, Katty, puts their name on the Lincoln, Jefferson, or Kennedy Memorial. No president threatens to attack Canada or another allied country. No president fawns over the Russian leader who they know has been a dishonest, unsavory adversary of ours for a generation. No president does that, but this president does that, Kat. Okay, so these are my opinions that I'm sharing with you guys, and we can go to a break now, but listen to me. This has gotta hurt somewhere in the system. Maybe it's going to hurt in the House races. Maybe it's going to hurt in a boycott, but the American people are giving this man a 61% negative approval rating because of the facts, Katty. Not just my opinions, the facts.
we said we want to pop down to Texas. Actually, I'm in San Antonio, Texas. Lovely San Antonio, Texas, to speak to Trinity University down here, which are a great group of people. But it's timely because Democrats have scored an unlikely victory. There was a special election for a Texas state Senate seat. Remember, every state has its own Senate and its own House of Representatives. And there was a special election for one of the Senate seats down here. And a Democrat, Taylor Remmett, won the seat by a large margin. The district had voted 17 points for Donald Trump in the 2024 election, but Remmett just won it by 14 points this weekend. That represents a 30-point shift for those of you doing the maths on this. And I think you've got a lot of Democrats, Anthony, looking at what happened, not, I hope, telling themselves that Texas is about to go blue, which is the big white whale of all Democrats. But they're looking at this saying this is part of a pattern that we reported on it a lot last year. We had those two big gubernatorial elections in New Jersey and Virginia, which swung to the Democrats in much bigger numbers than people had predicted. I had done some research that showed that you've had this huge swing. There have been, I think, in 2025, I think I mentioned this before, there were roughly 6 special elections for seats in Congress and in state houses, and Republicans candidates underperformed Donald Trump by an average of about 13 points. So across the country, you're seeing voters, go to the polls, as they did in Texas this weekend, to protest against two things. One is the cost of living, this affordability issue, which the president still hasn't done much about, and maybe presidents can't do that much about it. We'll see if the new Fed chair designate can do much about it. But the other thing that they're protesting against is the immigration policies and everything that we've seen with ICE. It turns out that you were right, that Americans don't like these mass deportations when they start going for a grandmother or a 5-year-old child, or they start killing American citizens, as they have done up in Minneapolis over the last few weeks. Then Americans don't like it. And I think that is a big part of what we're seeing. And the two groups that Republicans are losing in these local elections are the two groups that powered Donald Trump to power. There were young voters and Hispanic voters. Donald Trump built up this quite unusual coalition in 2024 that pushed him into the White House again. And it was young voters, young men in particular, and it was Hispanic voters. And his numbers have just fallen off the cliff with both of those two groups of voters. And I think that's what Democrats are looking at. I don't think Democrats are telling themselves they're going to win Texas. But if you want to set this up as a stage ahead of the midterm elections, which are now whatever they are, 10 months away, 9 months away. This is part of the reason that Democrats are feeling good. Donald Trump's reaction to this, I wasn't on the ballot. It's not about me. Never heard of this, even though he had endorsed Taylor Remmett's Republican opponent in the race. Do you think that Democrats are right to look at this and say, this is good news for us? This is a good sign?
On the margin, I do. But I have a bigger question, okay? And again, demographically, the Latino voters and some of these suburban electorate that voted for Trump in 24, they look like, hey, man, we had enough of this guy. But I have a bigger question for you, and that's about the electoral process and the integrity of the process. Democrats tell me, don't worry about that. Trump is not going to meddle in the midterm elections. It's too decentralized for him to meddle. Do you believe that, Katty?
I mean, I think those are great questions. And we've already seen some meddling because we've seen Texas and California make moves to redistrict their districts in ways that would politically advantage themselves, either Republicans in Texas or Democrats in California. That is a form of election engineering, if you like. That is a way you set the playing field. And the Republicans are trying to set the playing field so that they have more seats going into the midterm elections. I think the issue that has been raised in the last week or two by Donald Trump, and I don't know whether it is just because this is something he cannot let go, or whether it's something he brings up like a cultural weapon when he's doing badly because of all the scenes from Minneapolis, or there's a great deal of pushback and he's had to row back on Greenland, or he says that allied NATO forces didn't fight very well in the wars in Afghanistan and he has to row back from that. And so guess what he brings up again? he starts bringing up the 2020 election. And if you had to kind of map the number of times he's mentioned the 2020 election during the course of the past year, I reckon AI could probably do it for us. You'd see a massive uptick in the last 2 or 3 weeks. He's gone back to his old playbook. The election was rigged. Now, there's no new evidence, and we can get into what was happening down in Fulton County, Georgia, where they've demanded the election rolls. There's no new evidence, as far as I can see, that's come out that suggests that there was something quantifiably different about the 2020 election that has not already been litigated. So why is he bringing it up now? Why is he going back to that playbook? I think you're right. Maybe he's going back to the playbook to create a false narrative around election security more broadly that is designed to destabilize the upcoming midterm elections. So this is not actually about the 2020 election. This is a narrative that is taking place about the 2026 election. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes. And in Catherine Belton's book, Putin's People, which was written about 5 years ago, the legendary journalist Catherine Belton said that what would the Russians ideally want in the West, particularly in the longest standing democracy, the United States? What would they want? They would want someone of credibility to sow the seeds of distrust in the electoral process. Are the statements by the 45th and 47th President of the United States doing that, Katty?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got the double whammy of, we know the fact that in 2016, the Russians were meddling in the US election process, but now it's not the Russians that are raising issues about electoral security. It's Donald Trump that keeps raising issues about election security. So what happened, just to fill people in, this week, the FBI executed a search warrant at the Fulton County election office in Georgia. Fulton County was at the heart of all of the disputes about the 2020 election. Georgia, you'll remember, all of you, was a state that Donald Trump lost, but pretty narrowly. It was by about 10,000 votes. He went to the Secretary of State and said, find me more votes. The Secretary of State said, no, that's not how it works. Fulton County was the county that a lot of the dispute was focused on. So last week, the FBI goes down to Fulton County and they want to search. They have a search warrant and they want to search the Fulton County offices and they want to take away things like the electoral rolls, more information about the 2020 election. This has been hauled over so many times. They've gone through it. They've litigated it so many times. And one of the things that was really weird about the raid was that Tulsi Gabbard, who is the director of national intelligence, was present at the raid. The reporting from the Wall Street Journal is that she called Donald Trump from the office, from the Fulton County election offices, and kind of put him on speakerphone. But Tulsi Gabbard's role, a bit like the CIA, is to deal with foreign international threats. So a lot of questions. What's she doing there? Is it constitutional that she's there? Has she got new information of some international player meddling in the 2020 election? What's the new information that would justify a new search warrant when this has been gone over so many times already and nothing nefarious has been found? Or is Tulsi Gabbard just trying to save her own job? And so she's trying to get in with Donald Trump, and she knows that the way you get in with Donald Trump is you say, Mr. President, the 2020 election was stolen. I'm going to go down there. I've got new information. But the fallout is that people will not trust the election system as much as they did.
So, Katty, Tulsi Gabbard, the Wall Street Journal, let's give them kudos because they have a mole inside the White House. There's no question. And they have a mole that's an adjutant to the president. In
journalism, we call it a source, by the way. We don't call it a mole. This is not a John le Carre novel.
Let me rephrase this. This is not The Rest is Classified. We have a source.
I know that you secretly want to be the host of The Rest is Classified.
We have a source.
We can call it a mole
only
just to
for
make
the
you
Kennedy
happy.
assassination, okay? McCloskey, if you're listening. Okay, but we have a source inside the administration that does not like the administration. Okay, right. Because they're dropping dimes to the Wall Street Journal, and the Wall Street Journal is doing some exceptional reporting. We have to give them kudos.
I agree.
They reported on the $500 million, you tell me what it is, we'll call it a business transaction, but you're having a business transaction with the president, and then you're getting AI chips that were classified. I don't know. We'll just leave that there. We'll leave it there.
We'll leave that hanging.
Yes, we're going to leave that hanging chat out there. Now, we have at 5 a.m. this morning, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that a whistleblower complaint was filed against Tulsi Gabbard.
Amazing. Yeah. And that is so secretive, they've got it locked in a cupboard.
Yes. So something is going on.
Something's up, and Tulsi needs to save her job. And if you need to save your job in the Trump administration, you either go after people on the streets of Minneapolis or you say the election was stolen.
So the inspector trying to put pressure on the inspector general now to say that this confidential whistleblowing complaint isn't justifiable. See what's going on? But you see, Katty, this is the good news for America. And this is the good news for people listening who say, wow, America has really lost its way. Yes, that is true. But there are still very, very good people in America. And there's still a system in place in America where there are unwilling participants in this faux fascist charade. Notice I said faux in front of fascist, so you can't be overly mad at me. And they're rising up and they're speaking
just a
out.
bit mad, like just a little bit mad.
Yeah.
Or not like overly mad.
Okay, so go ahead. Provide us your erudite analysis of Miss Gabbard and her role in all this.
I think Miss Gabbard is down there to save her job. I honestly think that's what she's doing. I think she was squeezed out of all of the Venezuela raid stuff. She is not respected in the Trump administration. She's been put on the outs, and she's thought to herself, what can I do? I'll go down to Georgia and I'll find some way to make a show of being down there, and I'll call the president when I'm down there and tell him that I'm in the Fulton County, Georgia election offices and that we've got new information and we're digging everything up and we're going to prove, Mr. President, that you should have been the 46th president. You should have been reelected in 2020 and that the election was stolen. I honestly can't see otherwise why the head of DNI would be down there unless, my God, there is some unbelievable kind of foreign intervention evidence that we haven't come across. But the way that I have never known an election that has been litigated and relitigated and relitigated, whatever it was, 60 different lawsuits brought by the Trump team and all of them dismissed. I mean, this was looked at by so many judges that if there was some massive fraud or some massive foreign intervention, I can't believe we wouldn't have found it. So I think she was down there to save her job. And I think the president is going back to the 2020 election stuff because he's, as we've been saying on the show, he's feeling the heat. He's feeling that heat across a whole range of things. In the last, he's pulled back from Greenland. He's pulled back from what he said about allies, NATO troops. He's pulled back, had to pull back on Minneapolis. Let's see what happens there. But he's had to pull back his people from Minneapolis. It's been climbed down central from the White House. And I think when he's under pressure, he goes back to 2020.
Okay, we have to, I know we have to go, Katty, but we have to do a little bit of role playing with me if you do not mind, okay?
Go on.
And I'm a reporter now, okay?
Okay.
And you're the FBI agent. Mm-hmm. And you have now, she took out her cell phone. Not a classified phone, but her cell phone. And she called the president. Mm-hmm. And the president got on the phone with Tulsi Gabbard to praise the FBI agents. And now you're the FBI agent and I'm interviewing you. And I say to you, well, what did you think about that? And you say what?
Well, we have gone over this. I would like to see the new evidence. I mean, if you're a good FBI agent, you know that this has been litigated up the wazoo. If you're a Trump, friendly FBI agent, you might be very flattered that she goes down there and he speaks to you while you're on the phone. And then you go out there and say, well, maybe there is new things. Maybe the President Trump is still interested. We should still keep digging because maybe it was an unfair election. And that's the trouble that's why it becomes insidious, is that even though there is no evidence that the 2020 election was anything other than free and fair, all of this just creates doubt, which is, guess what? Who is it? Who is the number one person that wants Americans to have doubt about the electoral system? Your friend, Vladimir Putin.
I'm going to leave it there, right? Because I'm going to get myself in trouble because I'm going to say some stuff and you guys can say you can't say that. So I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to talk directly. I'm breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk directly to the viewers and listeners. The obvious is the obvious, Katty K, and I'll leave it there.
There you go. Cryptic words from Mr. Scaramucci. Okay, that's it for today. This, of course, is, however, a super busy time, you'll have noticed, in American politics. And we don't have time to cover everything on this episode. We have not really talked about Minneapolis, which we would love to, because there is more going on up there that we should be talking about. We've only alluded to some of the graft that is taking place. But luckily for our members, we will be back on Wednesday to discuss more of the big stories this week. We're going to have an update on ICE, look at the Democrats' chances for the midterms beyond that Texas race we were just talking about, and how are other countries buying their way onto Donald Trump's board of peace. So do join us for that. Become a founding member at therestispoliticsus.com. We would love to have you in the club, and we'd love to hear your questions if you join up too. So go on, become a founding member. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Okay, we'll see you later in the week. Thank you, guys.